Excellent. We are back. Nice to see everybody here. So thank you for joining us and for your patience as we navigate the mechanics of getting sorted into our appropriate breakout rooms. So my name's KMC. I manage the Peace Corps Fellows and AmeriCorps program through the Illinois Institute for Rural Affairs. Happy to have you joining us for this session. And in case anybody needs a refresher so that you know that you're in the right breakout room, this session is entitled Engaging Teachers in Local Community Development Efforts. So if this is the room you are wanting to be in, you're in the right place. If you meant to be somewhere else, now's a good time to switch that. Again, I'm going to go through housekeeping details just for a moment, and then I'll introduce our speakers. Reminder, if you will, please enter any questions or comments that you might have in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that, as I know Tammy and Cammy will be as well, but I'll be monitoring and also monitoring the time. So I will alert our speakers when we have about 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to open up for Q&A, and then I'll also give a 5-minute warning so that we can have sort of summarizing thoughts and comments and such. So without any further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this afternoon session. And I know it's a relevant topic to many of you. And in fact, questions about this came up in the session I was just in before. So I hope some of the folks from that session made it over because I let them know you'd be addressing this. So again, we're looking at engaging teachers in local community development efforts. And we've got two individuals who are doing this right now. We've got Dr. Tammy Prad. She's co-chair of the Educational Studies Department in Monmouth College, just up the road from us here in Macomb. And in addition to her teaching and her administrative responsibilities, Tammy is also a board member with Rural Schools Collaborative. And her background in preparing teachers and as such our local leaders and future civic leaders in our community is important. And she brings a specific background in really looking at place-based and student-centered education models and such. And Tammy is, in addition to those responsibilities, is serving as a supervisor and a mentor to one of our current fellows, that's Cammy Davis. And so Cammy Davis is currently a second-year student in our fellows program in community development. And Cammy comes with her own background in education and also having served in Peace Corps. This second year in her service, and she'll share some of her experience, is really an opportunity to apply both her professional and her service and leadership opportunities to the work and the initiatives that Monmouth College and Tammy and local partners in the Monmouth area are engaged in. So I will let Tammy and Cammy take it from here. And I, again, welcome you and happy to have you here.
Thank you, KMC. Those were lovely, lovely things you said about us. And I am thrilled to be here with Cammy. It has been a wonderful experience. I think we would both agree to have working with us, a Peace Corps fellow, and such a wonderful person as we have with Cammy. So Cammy, I'm going to let you get started and have people do their chat work.
Great. So our title is Engaging Teachers in Local Community Development Efforts, and sort of a little introduction. I was going to try to add a poll, but that's not working. So as a teacher, always prepared with Plan B. So if you would, in the chat, please feel free to introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, your profession, and most of all, even if you don't tell us any of those things, I would like to hear about a teacher that left a meaningful impression on you, either good or bad. And we can give that about 5 minutes or so. I love some of these responses, especially the one about the bad experience with the teacher that thought you were copying a poem. I can relate to a bad experience in the classroom. Actually, probably one of my worst was in college when a teacher asked me if I was getting by because I was a pretty girl because I got a math problem wrong. And that definitely left an impression on me about gender stereotyping. These are great, and I really like to hear good stories too. And as you can see, teachers are really important. They can really shape who you are and your interests and even some of the things that you hate. So we're going to move forward a little bit, and I'd like to keep some of these comments in mind and might even bring them up again. And you might think of them as well while we're sort of sharing some of our successes. And I always love to talk about failures because that's how you end up succeeding in the end, is by trying. So I'll go ahead and move it to the next slide if that's okay. Let's see. Oh, there we go.
All right, so I'm gonna start and lay a little foundation here for some of the things that we have been working on and that Cammy has been integrally involved in with some of the programs and things that we're working on in Monmouth. One of the things that we have been doing in our educational studies department is really trying to frame some aspects of our actual curriculum that we also feel are important to our, not only our students, but also the vitality of our community. So the power of place is sort of that umbrella that we're talking about, where we can elevate the assets that are in rural spaces and communities. And one of the things that we use as the foundation for that is that schools are a very important part of rural spaces. And one of the things that our students use as a lens for that, which they can then take into schools as part of teaching, is a place triangle. And this place triangle was brought to us or introduced to us through Teton Science Schools out of Jackson, Wyoming. And we use this framework as a way for our students to look at their own place from an economic standpoint, a cultural standpoint, and ecological standpoint, and really think about all the assets that are there, but also information. So one of the things that I do with my students when I first have them is to think about Monmouth, where the college that they go to is located. And to think, do they know what runs the economy there? What people do to make money? What people do to thrive? What are the opportunities? And we go through some work with the culture here. It has a very diverse culture, especially linguistically, and then also the ecology. What spaces are here, and who feels welcome in those spaces and places? And so that has proved for us to be a very important part of framing not only our curriculum, but also ways in which we feel that we can reach out and be partners in the community, and particularly with school districts, but also how the students in those schools can also use this framework, and the teachers to use the community as more of a classroom and to impact communities. So that is something that we use all the time as some common language when working with schools, working with community, and working within the spaces on campus. So I wanted to just start with that because one other aspect that we work really hard with our students is to think about their teaching as transformative, not only in an educational sense, but also in those cultural, economic, and ecological senses as well. So what we came up with, and I'll just go to the next slide, what we came up with was called REDI, our REDI initiatives, our rural education initiatives. And we designed this starting in 2018. And the goals that we came up for our REDI program are strengthening our local relationships. And again, we have extended those not just to school districts or schools. We really always have, and most teacher education departments do have strong relationships with the districts and the schools, but also with folks in the community and partners outside within the region and outside the region. So strengthening our local relationships came first, fostering different kinds of collaboration with those relationships, and then accelerating community driven, accelerating community-driven action via rural revitalization through education. And so the things that we're doing with those is finding place teaching sites, which are schools that are interested in doing place-based education. We have an educational farm and garden, which helps us to think about place and ecology. And then we have a rural teacher corps, which are our teachers, our students that are interested in being rural teachers and helping them to be visionary leaders once they are out in the community. I've given a link there if you would like to look at our REDI report. It kind of shows a lot of the advances and the different things that we did over the last calendar year with those initiatives. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions as we go forward with those as well. So in working with place-based education, again, we want to help impact community, increase student and teacher engagement, and also, of course, boost academic outcomes as we do that. All right, the next slide is features a national organization. I already mentioned Teton Science School, which started in 1967 out of Jackson, Wyoming. But also we are very much coordinating with the Rural School Collaborative, which is a national organization. So this has really helped us think about local, regional, and national partners that can help with sustaining rural vitality, right? And so the Rural School Collaborative, of which I am a board member, started with just some volunteers in 2015, has really grown to having a real presence nationally. And one of the ways that we do that is by creating hubs. And so Monmouth is a hub, and we have many hubs all over the country. And you can see there that that national organization mission is to build sustainable rural communities through a keen focus on place, teachers, and philanthropy. You know, we're working to develop teacher leaders, to elevate teachers through place-based education. And a piece of what this organization brought for me in my work is also philanthropy, rural philanthropy, and economic development. And so working with schools to elevate that and also help students to contribute to their community through their learning. So for me, the partnership that we have, the Rural Schools Collaborative, is housed here at Monmouth College in our educational studies. That's where their national headquarters is. And so it has been a delight to see them grow and be a part of that growth, but also see how that national and regional and local all come together to support rural communities. And then the next slide, I'm going to let Cammy jump in and talk about some of our formal partners, because she has been instrumental first in her first year here with us as a GA. She worked more in-house on some of our REDI initiatives, and then as an intern in the community, she has been instrumental in coordinating and working with the vast number of partners that we have developed and partnerships we've developed over the last couple of years.
Okay, my computer is breaking up quite a bit, so can't understand what I'm saying. KMC just send me a message in the chat. So I've been working with, and Monmouth College has been working with quite a few organizations in the community. A couple that I've worked very close with, especially this year, has been the Warren County Public Library, for one, helping them out with not only the children's events, the teen events, and even some of the adult events, just sort of using my background in education to lead some book discussions and things like that. At the Jameson Center, helping out with tutoring, and at the Warren County Achievement Center, working with adults with disabilities, and helping out with events and activities, crafts. And then the schools around the area, I see students and teachers at the library, and of course at the community center. And it's been a really sort of an undertaking to connect all of these different places with each other, and with the college, to find a way to sort of build each other up. Sort of a big narrative, in rural living is a deficit, but we're trying to change that because there are so many assets, especially in Monmouth. And as I've lived there and got to know people in town, it really astounded me how many wonderful assets there are. And even the Buchanan Arts Center has been an amazing place for culture in the area. So it's been a real pleasure to go around and try to connect all of these different organizations with each other to sort of fill in any gaps that we have in the community. You don't really have to go too far sometimes to fill in some of those gaps. Right. And then let's see, for this next slide, this is sort of my general thesis. And it is a little cliche, but it's so true. Schools are at the heart of almost any community, especially rural communities. They're a major employer in many rural areas. And I can safely say that in my 6 years of teaching in the United States, I taught exclusively at rural schools. And I can definitely say that everybody has a little something to do with the schools, whether they work there or whether they go there for sports events or to see the school plays, or even to go to meetings. There is one high school in Berkeley, South Carolina, Berkeley County, South Carolina. The local high school actually is a place where people have funerals because there are just so few places in that town that can hold so many people. Schools play a really big role in some of those smaller communities where maybe they don't have sort of space to house lots of people. Let's see. I know that in Monmouth, the local Catholic school, ICS, has, let's see, I forget, I think that they're going to place third in basketball. And it was a really big deal in town. And we even put posters up at the library to sort of support the school. And, everybody sort of came out, alumni from all over, and they even traveled to go to one of the playoff games. So it sort of sounded like in our title that we are trying to give more work to teachers to engage them, but that's not true. I do want to make it clear that we are not trying to give more work to teachers or suggest that. But what we are suggesting is that teachers are already engaged in community development every day by showing up. And teachers are the ones who really see their students every day. Teachers are some of the ones that are the first to report abuse and neglect, but they're also some of the ones to really see the potential in their students and see gifts that, maybe somebody else didn't see before. So it's a really special job. And then also, you don't really have to be a teacher exclusively to be a teacher. And I can say from over the summer, I worked with a program or an organization called Good Food Collaborative, and they had this Kids Cook program. It was an educational program to teach kids how to cook and about nutrition. And the chef that set that program up, he was not a teacher, but of course became a teacher in that process. So that just kind of goes to show that anybody can be a teacher. Okay. So, like I said, teachers are already actively engaged in community development. The administrators, the teachers, the coaches, other faculty and staff, students, parents, and even alumni, they sort of create a culture. And whenever you're involved in a school, culture is a really big deal. It's sort of like this little community all on its own, even if it's in a smaller community. And all of these people are there to help young people reach their full potential and realize their own hopes and dreams. And what I've been able to do this year, I've been able to sort of be this in between and connect schools and students with all sorts of resources within the community, and connect the community to the school. And it's been a really great reciprocal sort of relationship. And that's why another big part of this is that it goes both ways. You know, schools play a really big part in community development, but also the community plays a big part in developing the smaller school community and culture. So here's probably one of my favorite success stories, and I think maybe Tammy would tell it best. This is one of her tartans, I believe, that did this.
Yeah, so this is an example of, well, let me start by saying sometimes schools are decontextualized, where they, you know, they're very central to the rural communities, like Cammy had stated. But their core learning approach sometimes is not necessarily central to the community. And so what this tries to do is link those two things in a little bit more concrete way, where, you know, that students and teachers are making change and are helping to improve the rural community. We have teachers that are teacher numbers are declining, and so we're trying to engage teachers more, especially in rural places, and funding is challenging. And so that's part of some of the things that we're trying to address. And sometimes teachers in rural spaces are professionally isolated. There might only be one of a grade level, or at the high school, one English. And so by bringing the classroom walls down, so to speak, and having the community play a bigger part in learning, it provides less isolation as well. So this is one example that one of our tartan students, who then became a teacher at the school here in Monmouth, did, where the students took some walks around their school community at all times of the beginning of the school year. And they noticed one thing that always was happening is that there was flooding in front of their school. And so when they were coming to school, they would get their feet wet as they came in, or they would have, you know, get splashed, or it was tricky, you know, when they were outside. And so they decided to think about why that happened. And Kylie, who had done was one of our early tartans and had gone through some work with us in place-based education, decided to start a project, an afternoon project with them, about why this was happening and what they could do to fix it. So the students, they did observations, they polled and did surveys of other areas in the community and to see if this was happening in other places. They brought experts in the field in. They had the folks from the water plant come in. They had the folks that from the city planning come in, and they found all different kinds of reasons why that was happening. One of them you can see over there to the right. The students there found that that when the community was getting rid of leaves, they were being shoved down into the drainage system. So that was one reason that they found that this was happening. And so you can see they were doing some field work there. And then what they did after that, after they had all their information, then they did some design thinking about what would it take to redesign the drainage in the area, and how could they problem solve that issue? Was it, you know, did they need the drainage system updated? Did they need to move the leaves in a different way? And so they came up with all these different kinds of proposals, not only to improve the drainage, but also maybe to change how the leaves were being moved during the fall season as well. You can move on to the next slide there. I think there's another part of that as well. Sure. Yeah, and so then the students, once they had all the information and they had their proposals, they proposed, actually, the teachers had several community members on different panels come in and listen, and the students presented their proposals, and then the panel of the community decided which one should be presented at the city council meeting. And so they did that, and that was the highest attending meeting that they had ever had, was when the students, these are sixth grade students had proposed what they decided would be something that the city might consider to do. So again, in that way, you had your students engaged, the teachers were engaged. Also, just anecdotally, the principal told me that during the time that the students were doing that, she had far less behavioral referrals as well. So that is a huge marker of engagement. So students, teachers, administration, many community members, and also the students were able to present that out. So that to me is a great model. It's very scalable with different ways that you can have individuals coming in and students going out into the community. I have lots of other examples too, but that one was one that Cammy, I think, liked that one in particularly as well.
Okay. So this next story, so this was last year around the fall, in partnership with the YMCA. Monmouth College's School of Education Studies hosted students at it was actually just at the farm for several activities. And it was a great opportunity to have some place-based activities. We had students out with Prad discovering bugs out in the garden and trying some of the different fruits and vegetables we still had out. And then we had some students out with frames, placing them on the ground and noticing what they were seeing in the frames. And we had some students that were learning about foliage and why leaves change color in the fall. And they were making little squares with evidence leaves that they had collected, and they were making them into a larger quilt to sort of tell a story about fall and foliage. And this was a really successful venture when we brought students back to sort of gather our thoughts. They were so excited about what they had just done. They wanted to trade their time at the swimming pool to come back and explore outside. It gave students an opportunity to be curious. There was an agenda, but there was also time for students to notice things and ask questions. And maybe not everybody knew the answers right then and there, but it sort of gave them something to think about and talk about later. And it gave students a great experience with place and learning what was around them. But this was such a great opportunity to really engage with students in this way to sort of bond with a place and sort of learn more about, why things change during certain seasons, why certain fruits or vegetables grow better, why you see certain bugs in one place and maybe not in another.
I just wanted to add too, I will highlight Cammy during that phase where we were creating some place-based units for our garden and farm. Cammy was instrumental in writing some of that curriculum, talking with teachers, looking at the district curriculum, and helping even with videotaping and things that we could provide for the community, talking with community members. So she was instrumental in us getting those programs off the get started. You want me to talk about this one?
This was an activity that took place over the summer, and this involved some more place-based activities and lessons. And Tammy and I both attended at different points. We had ESL students, and this was in partnership with Monmouth Roseville School District. ESL students and their families come to the farm and participate in activities. And this was a great opportunity for adults and students to sort of bond together, share language, share some culture, and then again, learn a little bit about a place. There were sunflower houses built. There was a scavenger hunt. There were even some rides on a tractor. And I believe that was about it, right, Tammy?
Yeah, that's a local beekeeper and fellow co-chair. So they were learning about bees and making honey.
Mm-hmm. And this was a great success. There was even a second part, if I'm not mistaken, maybe about a month later, and students had grown and sprouted their own plants, and then they sold them at the local farmers market. And, you know, that really brought the whole triangle together, didn't it, Tammy? The culture, ecology, and economy. And it really showed students sort of, you know, how a place can contribute to how you live and how the place around you, why it matters so much and why you should learn more about it and be as involved as you can. Okay. And then this is sort of a newer venture that I only know a little bit about, but I think it is amazing. Students at Monmouth College are working with the local elementary and high school to help with the state's substitute shortage. And I'm not really sure about how many students exactly are involved. Was it 28, Tammy?
Yes, our first round was we brought in ROE and we had 28 students sign up to get their emergency substitute license. And so when students are not in class or they're not in formal practicums, they are able to substitute in area schools.
And this is a really great example of, you know, the community sort of getting involved. These are future teachers, not quite yet, but getting their practice and lending a hand in schools and being that support that they really need. I think this is a really great idea, and I'd love to see how this sort of evolves over time. And then I have been working with the local library. And this has been a great opportunity to meet families in the community and really see what the library is doing to support their teachers and their schools. And they're doing a lot. I see students and teachers come in all the time to gather materials for lessons. And one of the things that really surprised me was that the library it no longer has overdue fines. So, and I can safely say as a teacher, we always got charged at school if we borrowed items that didn't go back or if they were damaged. And it really prohibits you from, or it makes you less inclined to borrow from the library. And whenever I had a student that I had to take to the library to check out a book, if they had an overdue fine, then they didn't want to go to the library. So I found that really deterred reading and learning. So it really made me so glad when I found out that the library does not do this. I think that it encourages students to go and read and acknowledges that things happen, which they do. And it's a really inviting place. There are programs for teens and children. These are some pictures from both, and it gets students involved in something that is fun after school. We try to make it sort of a lesson and a skill. Like in the upcoming month, we're going to teach the teens how to make bracelets out of Starburst wrappers. They're going to learn how to make dream catchers, and that involves in weaving and interesting skills like that are a little bit more fun, but still sort of educational. And I think that libraries and having books in classrooms is really important because students really need to be able to see themselves in literature. It's also really important for students to be able to see others in literature. So keeping a robust collection of books at the local library and in the classroom is extremely important. And I've also loved seeing around town all the little libraries and giving students, books in different languages and finding books with students from, around the world they can see themselves in, and then they get a window into somebody else's life. And I think that's amazing and extremely important. And then the last bit is the Jameson Center. And these pictures are from one of the professors at Monmouth College, Prad. He came in and brought typewriters into the Jameson Center, the students. This place I found to be extremely successful in their mission to help students catch up. So students from the local elementary schools, if they're behind in grade level, they can come for free after school and receive tutoring. This isn't just help with homework. This is actual curriculum, and students are caught up in their math and reading where they're lagging. It's also great because it involves community members like high school students and college students at Monmouth College coming in and bonding with other members of the community, sort of like bigs and littles. And it's been a great growth experience for the high school students, getting to know these kids and sort of be a mentor, and for the college students to get to know these kids and be a mentor. And there's a lot of sharing that goes on. Also, the importance of having the basic necessities is addressed here. Students cannot learn if they are hungry or if they don't have the proper attire. So the community center is a great place where, they can get these items that they need and still keep their pride and dignity. I feel like that is extremely important, and I've learned that from being there. And I just can't say enough good things about the community center and all of the good work that they've done. So many students have come through and graduated once they've gotten up to grade level, and it's been incredible to watch the students and the mentors just kind of become better and better.
Yeah, I want to add to another great connection was I have a group of students that I was taking to an elementary school on a daily basis, and I noticed out the window, which is right by the Jamison Center. Jamison Center has a big garden, and I think it was even tended to by an AmeriCorps Vista. And my students who had gone to our educational garden here and done some things with their science methods said, why don't we see if we can take our students from the elementary school over to that garden, because it was right across the street. So we partnered with the Jameson Center and the garden there, and we were able to take the classes that we were working with over to that garden, and they did some science investigating and learning some things over there. And that was through a connection with the Jameson Center and that AmeriCorps Vista that was working there as well. Yeah, so I think probably now is a good time if people have questions or want some clarification on any of what they have heard so far. We'd be more than happy and excited to answer any questions. Or I guess KMC, are you moderate? Are you like gonna?
I'm just going to say thank you for the prompt. Yes, I'll encourage everybody to type questions out in the chat and give you a moment to collect your thoughts there. I do want to say that I so appreciate, just while questions are being entered, I so appreciate that in your presentation you hit on things that were raised this morning with regard to, how do we make communities welcoming, right? If we're really trying to recruit residents and we want to retain residents and we need diversity and we want to welcome families that are returning and from other places, not just keeping our own, young adults, but attracting others. And some of those activities that you had, where you had images when you worked with ESL, right? Those students, or when you were engaging, anytime you're engaging students and their families and their teachers, and you're creating a safe space and awareness about the community, you're doing just that Neil was calling us to do this morning, right? You're helping create a welcoming community. It's welcoming, it's safe, it's a place where people are going to be more connected, right? And so, so right there, I love that the examples that you were giving are tying into a session from this morning's breakout session, because again, it's not that rural places are dying, they're changing, and we need to change how we, think about them, talk about them, and engage. I'll ask just as a reminder, anybody whose mic isn't off, maybe we won't get little crackling or feedback. And then I will give you all a minute to submit questions via the chat, either about these concrete examples or something that you might want to draw. Again, both Cammy and Tammy are experienced teachers in classrooms, as well as teaching future teachers and engaging. So I think they might accept questions for any of their experiences.
I wanted to say one more thing that was really exciting that just happened this week, and that is that there are 2 high school students that have gone through Monmouth Roseville the whole time, and they were in the EL program. So they're English language learners and multilingual, and they are in high school and then have been tutoring at the Jameson Center, and the Jamison Center just this week contacted me and said that these 2 students are really interested in learning about how they can become teachers. And so that really kind of, for me, has come all the way around, where, you know, that's a need in the community, that's an economic need, that's a engagement need, that's a cultural need, that's an ecological need. You know, it fits all those different aspects, and I think that that's just an amazing thing to have happened.
Let me, I'm going to go ahead and read a question here. And this really has to do with sort of state standards here. So are there state standards that, so many questions popped in that they bumped from the chat. Are there state standards that align in some ways with the curriculum that you're currently teaching and or engaging your Tartans with?
Yes, in fact, I link everything to state standards. There's nothing that is within place-based that that would preclude state standards, right? And in fact, in working with some of the districts that we do work with and Teton Science School, we will help them to see those things and work those aspects into whatever projects or place-based that they're doing. But in the short run, yes, it is completely feasible to do that. In fact, all of the standards are very inquiry based, which fit very nicely with project and place-based education.
I'll read this. So thank you for that response. I'm going to read this next question just to make sure we get to it. So wondering how this work is funded. Funding is always a question, right? So that's very relevant. Please address that. And can you speak more about the role the community members are playing in these activities? So those beyond those that are directly, connecting the teachers and the parents.
One thing, thank you for asking about the funding, because that's an ongoing process. We are, the college, for our REDI initiatives, the college has been very generous, and we have had very generous donors. We have had some grant opportunities, but we're still kind of working on we offer stipends to our tartans. It's not very much, but it's some money for them. And so we are always in the process of trying to find funding, but it's really up to us to do that. And then what we also do is just connect the school district and the teachers with materials and training and support. We try to support. And so there might be some funding that comes in through the school districts if they're interested in doing this. But really, we're not, I will just say we're not really well funded at all. We're just kind of piecing it together with Compeer has been a great supporter of ours. The Rural School Collaborative has been an excellent supporter. financially, as well as putting us in connection with some different things. But it's not a lot of money that's going into it. And so we're always looking for ways to do that. And then the community, one of the ways that I can is through funding. Compeer has been a great collaborator with us. We have the Buchanan Center for the Arts. And so we have the library, the Chamber of Commerce, we have a United Way here, the Jameson. So all of these entities are pretty much like always at the table with a lot of the things that are going on. So yes, we are working with teachers that are in the classroom every day in schools, but we are also working with a lot of organizations that provide, summer programming, after school programming, EL, English language, community development, all those types of things. So we're still very young. And so that's part of our 5-year plan, is to grow those partnerships in a more meaningful and significant way.
So thank you. I want to echo those comments in terms of a best practice. I think that if we see trends in small rural communities, you talked about collaboration and partnerships, and we've heard that in the morning plenary sessions as well, developing that regional approach. We know those things to be true, and what it takes is time to build those relationships, to earn the trust, and to work, creatively and innovatively. So maybe it's reaching out to the economic development folks in the community, or the workforce development folks, right? I know you're already, obviously Monmouth College is already a 4-year higher ed institution in the community. What community colleges, what other entities exist? And I know that you are doing that, and others might be thinking creatively about how best to engage other partners in order to come up with creative solutions. Talk about innovation, that idea that you have some of your teacher prep students applying to serve as substitute teachers is an example of a way to meet a challenge in this moment, right? We know that COVID has hit educators hard across the country, and in rural communities perhaps more so. So that's an example of an innovative way to meet the challenge of a moment, right? So
and I'm always trying to think too about, is it scalable, and that not every community has a college, right in its home and its place, right? And so what are the aspects that we are trying to develop that we could then say, to some of the communities that surround us that don't have, students and to support all that. So how would maybe a small rural community that doesn't have a college, work with high school students to do tutoring and with their community centers, and to do this type of teaching and learning and economic development while students are, in school. And so I'm always trying to think that through too, that not every small community has the kind of resources that we have, but they have other resources that they might be able to pull in such a same way.
thank you. I think that's where that triangle that you shared at the very beginning of your presentation is such an important visual for all of us to take with us, to think about where do we see connections, and where are we not identifying connections that may exist between, place and culture and economy, and so community, really to think intentionally. And I hope, if nothing else, what the presentation will be shared, but the folks take away that visual. And if you're coming to this presentation as somebody who's coming from the business side or economic development or civic leader, that you'll think creatively, well, if you enter this relationship from, through your door, who else is there, and who do you currently have or don't have a relationship with, right? And so that we might take that and challenge ourselves to think about how to develop connections and relationships with others, with whom we may not already be working with, right? Because again, we're going to have to look inside as much as possible to develop and strengthen, rather than continually looking, outside. Which again, I think you've got some good examples of how that happens.
And I think a big takeaway too could be that using this lens for students also has them engaged in the community where, they're invested, they're more invested. We don't claim to say this will make everybody want to stay in their own rural community. But in many respects, they're invested in it and can look at it in different ways. And I K-12 students are citizens already, and so they contribute a great deal back. And how can that look maybe different than it has in the past?